Hey everyone, you are listening to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. This little banter is about a car ride long and features your hosts, JJ Parker and Melissa Albers. JJ owns a tech company and Melissa has been a coach working with influencers for the last 18 years. So JJ, have you ever been to like a Perkins or a breakfast place where they have those little packets of jelly on the table?
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Those are like the best thing to play with.
Oh my gosh. When I was little, we did not have a lot of money and we didn't have a habit of eating out a lot. Mm-hmm. And we were on our way to Thanksgiving with our family and it was probably like a 5-hour drive. So it was a really big deal that we stopped at, I think it was Perkins.
So,
early.
right. So it's early. Everyone piles in the car. You got your stuff. You're like on the Thanksgiving road trip, right?
Absolutely. And we always had little cars and I was the only child. So I was like the last thing in the back seat. So there was never any space. It was always super crowded. And so we got to Perkins, we had our breakfast and then it was like, hustle, hustle. We're going to be on our way. So we're not late. And I took one of those grape jellies off the table and I was so enamored with it. I stuffed it in my pocket because I wanted to save it for later and show people this cool jelly. Well, of course, the minute I got in the car and squeezed into the car, the whole packet exploded.
Oh no.
In my pocket and I had purple gooey all down my pants. And naturally, in the car for at least 1 hour, you're done. Like that purple's going to be there for the rest of those pants' lives.
Yeah, right.
My mom was furious. She was furious because here I was showing up at an event. She has one child and she can't even get her there without looking like a hot mess.
Yeah. So that Thanksgiving was like set for like a good time, right?
I think I was about
from
8.
the Perkins.
Right from the Perkins. There's so many things that happen at Thanksgiving that are just so stressful.
Right? So since Thanksgiving's like right around the corner, we should talk about Thanksgiving, right?
I think that we should.
Isn't it funny, just like your mom, like we all have these like expectations about how these holidays should go, right?
Right.
Like we have nothing short of straight up fantasies about like the amount of like family togetherness and happiness that happens at these things, right?
Love and joy. Thanksgiving, I'm gonna sound like a terrible curmudgeon. Thanksgiving is literally one of my least favorite holidays. It's such a commercial event. There's so much pressure. Like I just have always felt this huge pressure to do the commercial Thanksgiving, meaning everyone is in harvest colors. Everyone is, congregated around fun little appetizers.
Yep. You have like the most beautiful golden turkey and you like take it out of the oven and it's steaming and set it on the table and everyone looks at it and just is so impressed with your culinary skill.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Exactly right. I call this the commercial grade Thanksgiving. So many expectations about what we're supposed to eat, expectations about how we're supposed to act, who's going to be there, what will we talk about, how will we look cool, Yeah.
Yeah, well, it certainly causes a lot of stress and anxiety with all those expectations around it.
Yeah, I think particularly this year, I think it's important for us to really talk about some of those family dynamics and family expectations because, and I'm hoping our listeners get a chance to listen to this, I think, because this is going to be like the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I think, is when we're going to be playing this. I'm not sure. But I think that people's emotions get really amped up during the holidays. And especially now, this year, emotions are already amped up.
Yeah. Well, not only like do we have just like the regular holiday stuff, we're going to like have to figure out how to navigate it in the midst of COVID, right?
Right.
And like make decisions around like, should we go see Grandma Evelyn or not?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Is that exposing her to something? Like, how do we navigate the COVID rules? Even how do we make those value decisions for our own families?
I know it's very, very, very challenging. And what I think is so interesting is like if we just sort of parse out these holiday seasons, like let's just set the pandemic aside for a minute. You just talk about Thanksgiving. Well, you have Halloween, which kicks off the holiday season, but if your children are grown now, then not necessarily, right? For sure, the Thanksgiving is when everything starts.
Yeah, Halloween at this point is just my excuse to eat bags and bags of candy corn. So we start the season where I'm just like full of candy corn.
Yeah, jacked up on sugar.
we roll right into Thanksgiving.
Right. And too, like I've talked about before that I've come from a divorced family. So I think the family dynamics are something that are sort of interesting to think about today.
Right. Just like whose family are we having Thanksgiving at, right?
Yes.
That's a huge stressor.
Yep. And then what are the social dynamics within that particular family unit? And we don't really talk about these things, but I think people have those feelings. They start to just build within you. It's like, oh no, we're starting like, here it goes. And now there's going to be an argument in our house about where we're going to go for Thanksgiving. And then, if it's this family or that family, what are the, how do I have to act? What are the expectations? How do people behave in those events? And that's very, very stressful.
Yeah. And we should all remember that it's not even the day of Thanksgiving, right? That stuff starts happening weeks and weeks ahead of time.
Yep. As soon as the conversations about where we're going, I think is when it starts.
Right. So, and it might start kind of slow. Like you say, okay, Thanksgiving's coming up. We got to start thinking about that. But that ramp up towards events that, really challenge you emotionally.
Yeah.
That's just a build.
Yeah, it is. And too, like for me, I talk about it that I'm from a divorced family, and as an adult from a divorced family, I cannot express enough how much that impacted me. And I don't, I'm just fine. Like I'm not trying to say I'm, not fine. I'm fine, but I think that we think about children when their families get remarried and that sort of thing. We think about those dynamics of change. And then we think about how now children are learning to adapt to not just their regular families, those two units, but now they're also adapting to yet another family unit. And it really, for a child, depending on the age, it can be really jarring and really hard to figure out.
Yeah. I just have to give you a hard time because you're like, no, I'm fine.
Oh,
Thanksgiving is my least favorite holiday.
But I'm fine.
Nothing's happened. It's fine. Obviously, none of that impacted you at all.
I hate Thanksgiving. I totally hate Thanksgiving.
But I'm fine.
I'm fine, but everything's fine. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. My best friend and I will often say that. Her mom will use that phrase when her mom is like trying to get over something, except her voice goes up 10 octaves. I'm fine. Everything's fine. No, so I'm going to start using a higher octave now in just a minute. Everything's fine. Oh my gosh, you busted me and you're so right.
So the idea, that your experiences as a child often get surfaced even as an adult, even if you're maybe not even connecting it. And even I was thinking about that. Like I don't have like a particular traumatic childhood. I felt it was like fairly normal, very steady, right?
Yeah.
But for me, when I go to family events like Thanksgiving especially with like my extended family, like I do feel like an adolescent. I feel like that awkward kid when I was like 13 years old. I'm like, why is this? Like this is it puts me right back there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's amazing how being around certain members of your family cause you to almost move back in time.
Oh my gosh. Yes, because if it's a generation that's above me, like what I feel is this tremendous like guilt. Like I have to perform and behave a certain way, and I have to like avoid certain conversations that I worry are going to get me in trouble. Like I do that.
You're gonna get
I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Don't say something unpopular. Avoid these topics.
Well, the other thing I definitely feel when I'm in my like extended family situation is like a social awkwardness, right? Like I feel like I should know these people, right? Like they're my family. Like I feel some pressure, like some expectation that I should like know what's happening in their lives. I simply don't, because I don't see them very often. And that makes me feel really bad.
Yeah.
Right? Like it makes me feel crappy. Like, oh, wow, here's another year where I didn't really keep up with what's going on with my family members. And now I have to make some weird chit chat with them.
Yeah. And I'm thrown together with these people maybe 3 times a year. We really don't have that much in common as adults. And I feel like I'm supposed to act a certain way, but I'm really uncomfortable because I have no interest in, no matter what, I can't even make myself. I can't make myself.
And, and all of them are great people, and and we can get through conversation, but it's just, when you don't see people very often, it's really hard.
Okay, I have to tell you, this is really funny.
What?
Right now, my leg is like pumping up and down. Like I never am like this in when we're recording podcasts, but I have obviously been triggered because like
this is like an awesome self-awareness for everybody, right? Like
this sucks.
Like we're talking about Thanksgiving. Melissa's fine, by the way. She's only shaking. It's fine.
This totally sucks. Oh my goodness. It is true. Like even just look at our personality differences, like you always talk about being a little introvert. I always talk about being a little extrovert. And yet in these conversations, we both are feeling awkward. It's like in those family units, like I have the same desire. Well, you didn't say you had this desire, so maybe it's just me. I literally just want to like show up, drop my plate off, whatever I'm making, say, hi, how's it going? And I want to like be like a little piece of firecracker where I come in late when the party's already going. I make my entrance, do my thing, and then I get out.
You're just trying to like get the check mark on the attendance record, right?
Yeah, I don't want to get in trouble.
No, so it's so interesting that we can barely talk about Thanksgiving without getting,
triggered.
Really triggered. Yeah. It is crazy.
It is crazy.
So of course, like as we're leading up to the event and as we're going to go to Thanksgiving, it's going to be even more, right?
Yeah. It is. Yeah. I mean, I think people have all of these same things, maybe not to the extreme that Melissa is. Look at, I'm even using my name in the third person as though I'm not here. That's a sign. But I think that even families that have a wonderful time coming together and have a great time, I think that there's still sort of a lot of family dynamics and pressure that have formed how we respond to people that we love. And when we see certain people, like even for me on the sweet side of all of this, my grandmother was the person that was the closest to me in my whole life. And I would get so excited to see her on Thanksgiving. I couldn't sleep for nights. Like I would be counting down nights in the dark. I remember being wide awake, counting down how many nights until I could see her. And I just, the joy of being with her was so amazing for me. And that lasted my whole life until she passed away. So I think that it just elicits these really deep connecting feelings. And I think understanding them is really, really important. And yet you're still going to have them, right? And I think that like now she's gone. So Thanksgiving without her is never what it was when she was here.
Well, so I think that's a good point. Like, we were talking about all of the anxiety and kind of like the negative part of these events.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good parts too, right? Yeah. There is the feeling of love and the warmth and some of the things. I always remember my aunt and uncle's house being really extra warm, right? Like, I think they kept the heat real high or something. There's like 100 people in their tiny house. Um, but there's some of those feelings too. Those are great feelings,
Yeah.
right? And those are the
Yeah.
ones that maybe we need to focus on a little bit more, or at
Yeah.
least use to get us centered again.
Exactly. So that's what I was going to say, is I was going to say that whether the feelings are really bad or really good or not really strong, they're definitely binding and they're definitely long, like they've been with you forever. So recognizing those feelings in your body, they're going to pop up. And I think the holidays, this is the primary reason I'm thinking that people have a really difficult time, is because it is popping up all of those really deep-seated, long-term feelings that you have. And as an adult, don't you feel like you kind of you figure out how to get kind of over it? Like you get kind of like, not over it, but you learn techniques to get numbed out by it, or you learn techniques on how to get through something without really noticing the feeling anymore. You focus more on the technique as opposed to the feeling.
Yeah, or it's kind of like you put a wall up so you don't have to deal with some of that.
Yeah.
Or you just get yourself real busy doing something else, right? Distracted.
Yeah, which is exactly why people start to get depressed and get down at this time of the year. Because they're numbing out they're trying to numb out their feelings. They're trying to pretend like their feelings don't matter enough so that they can just, quote, get by, right? It's a coping strategy.
Yeah. Well, and certainly, like, I don't know about you, but my consumption of brandy goes up a little bit more.
I'm not much of a brandy girl, but yes, you definitely know the clear liquids I'm all about. Gin is good. Vodka's good.
But right, like you're saying, a lot of times we just try to get through it, and we would just use coping mechanisms to do that. Like whether it's, self-medicating or avoidance or anger, like all these are coping mechanisms, right?
Right. And I think that brings us to the point that we can start to talk about how it can be really depressing to be in the holidays. Yeah. Because I think these waves of feelings come over you, and then we, like you try to do these mechanisms that you're talking about, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it certainly is exhausting. It can be really, really tiring. And, as we talk in the self-awareness journey, it really is about, how about if you just be with your feelings and that your feelings are really okay?
Yeah. Yeah. So when we're, maybe let's walk through the timeline and talk about like what we can do.
I think that's
as we walk through it, right? So we'll rewind a little bit. Maybe we'll start at Halloween, but right, Halloween's done. Put all our decorations away, and now it's time for Thanksgiving, and you've got this anticipation, right?
Yep.
And you might start feeling that.
Yeah.
I think the first thing would be to recognize that those feelings are coming, right?
Like a
so maybe trying to get in touch with that sooner than later, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's like we're always talking about just being aware of what your feelings are. Where do you feel it in your body? This is oftentimes where people start to overeat a lot. People gain a lot of weight over the holidays, and everyone says it's because there's so many junk and pieces of candy and sweets and everything else around like that. But it's a coping mechanism. That's another coping mechanism. So where are you feeling these feelings in your body? Like where are they sitting and making you uncomfortable?
Yeah, sometimes like if I find myself like maybe responding to something in an overboard way, like in an unusually strong way, that's usually a sign for me like, oh no, it's probably not the thing I just responded to. It's probably something else going on, and it's just coming out in that way, right? So maybe keeping a good observation of your behavior, and maybe if you do seem like you're acting in a way that's not typical, to just step back from that and think like, oh yeah, the holidays are coming up. Okay, I might be feeling anxious here and there, and really try to peel that back a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and I think what you're sort of alluding to is having kind of a plan, right? Like trying to have a proactive plan, like getting out ahead of it. What are the things that we can be aware of? Like, can we be objective about ourselves in this conversation and after, before coming into the holidays? Can we be objective about how we respond to things?
Yeah. And then maybe well before Thanksgiving, set the expectation. Like, right? Like, what do you actually expect to happen on Thanksgiving Day, right?
Yeah,
and get some, maybe put that into reality instead of like some sort of fantasy.
Well, and I think that the really important thing about is what do you expect to happen? And I always say expectations are resentments waiting to happen. So I think we have to be very careful about the expectations that we're putting. Are we putting expectations on the day and on people that we have absolutely no control over? Or are we putting expectations on for ourselves? Like, what are some reasonable expectations for me that I can do that make me feel better? Like, I want to feel good throughout this whole thing. And this is not to say that people don't feel good. I think it's that whole combination of feeling good and bad at the exact same time and not knowing what to do, right? So I think you're exactly right. It's having kind of thinking about that proactively and sort of like, being objective.
My favorite state, mixed emotions. So then, right, like a couple days before, right, we're probably busy getting ready.
Yep.
Getting all the last minute sort of details. I know that we're always like probably going to the grocery store 5 times because we keep on forgetting like one little thing. And then, maybe my wife's like, oh yeah, and also we need to construct an 8-foot tall turkey in the front yard out of paper mache. I'm like, what?
My unrealistic expectation usually comes in the form of, could you please make a really fresh fruit platter that includes several tropical fruits that are not in season and make a beautiful platter? Thanks.
So right there, that just really gets chaotic, right? All the running around, which always leaves me just feeling like I'm in the spin cycle.
Oh, I know.
Right? It does like there's no moment of rest, right? Yeah. Like we got all this stuff to do. We're super busy and trying to get everything ready.
Yeah.
Which isn't fun, right? So there, maybe we just need to remember to like, hey, structure your day so you maybe don't have to run around so much, and maybe you just need to take a little bit of time to sit.
And you know what? Maybe the other thing too is to be okay with the chaos. Maybe part of it is the allowing instead of the fighting against.
Lean into it.
Lean into it a little. Well, what if you just expect that, you know what? Every year it's a little chaotic.
Yeah.
And every year I try to steel myself and pretend like it's not going to be, but it always is.
But it always is.
So maybe I can have a different strategy to just accept a little.
Have you seen that like one meme where it's like a dog in an office and the office is on fire and he's just calmly sitting there like, and it just says, this is okay.
No.
Yeah, it's my favorite one.
This is okay. But, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I like the idea of just leaning into it. Like, hey, you know what? This is a couple of days of chaos and let's just really enjoy it.
Yeah, because there's probably very little that you're going to do to change a decades-long family dynamic.
Yeah.
And I think some people, that's what they do, is they have new awareness or they start to grow a little bit and they step into these family units and they just disrupt everything because they think, well, now that I'm this way, everybody else should be this way because I was broken before and now I'm not. And I think that happens a lot too.
Let's shift into like we've got our Thanksgiving all set up. The house is perfect. The turkey's in the oven. Everything's working. And then all these people start showing up.
Yeah.
Certainly, an energy shift totally happens in the house, right? That's the one thing that when other people come over, or I go to someone else's house, I try to sense is like, how is the energy gonna shift?
Yeah, me too, because you're usually frenetically preparing to have people in your house. The house is spotless. Everybody comes in. You eat this really messy meal. And 3.5 hours later, they leave, and it's worse than when you cleaned it. and you're exhausted. So you're right. So that must be the chaos you're referring to, that little 3.5 hour bit in the middle. But yeah, I think that's a really good call out. It's like, we can try to be a little proactive. So what are some proactive ways that we can be with how we feel about it, and come up with maybe strategies for ourselves beforehand to help us enjoy, not just make it through, not steel ourselves against, but to just enjoy some of the chaos and some of the fun, the silliness. Enjoy some of the silliness that our families are.
Yeah, right.
And then having a strategy, I think what you're sort of leaning towards is, in the moment, what are some reactive strategies that we could have if we're in the middle of the chaos and we sort of have a moment where we're feeling not good?
Yeah. So, for me, things like, I'll have some like go-to statements, like phrases for like, like again, like that social awkward thing that I have.
Yeah.
Just like ask simple questions. Like I'll think of those before a family event. Like, oh, here's some generic questions I can actually ask that will help me through that part. Or
that's really good.
Here's how I'm going to excuse myself when Uncle Bob corners me and talks at me for 30 minutes, know, some things like that to just kind of like help navigate your evening.
I've done that as well. And I've actually removed myself and said that I was going to use the restroom and gone to one that's furthest away from where the activity is, and just found like a chair
3 miles up the road at the Holiday gas station.
Because those are open on Thanksgiving. And then just sit in that room locked in. See, I don't think we're helping our listeners at all.
No. We might be helping you, though, get to the root to some. That's funny.
I think that, and you've mentioned it a couple of times during our conversation, though, along with all of these regular dynamics that are pretty challenging for some people, in addition to being fun and crazy, we also then do have the pandemic and all of the anxiety coming into that.
Yeah. So everything's just going to be amped up.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's just going to be, I think that, again, it's allowance. I think noticing our feelings and not making ourselves wrong. I think it's allowing the experiences and not trying to control the experiences, because there's no such thing as being able to control the situation anyway. That's not real.
Right.
And just being able to be okay with what is, and maybe even enjoying some of the chaos a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I really like that. I really like that idea.
The way I visualize that is like, it's like you've got a pool table, right? And you're going to break, right? So you got all the balls lined up in a little triangle, and you like send the cue ball down there, and then the whole thing explodes into chaos. It's like you set up the stack of balls, but as soon as the cue ball breaks them all apart, you have no control, and it's chaos.
Exactly.
So don't think you're in control of that.
You're not going to get them back in the triangle, at least without touching each one of them in a big Herculean effort. Well, I think if anything, this would just be a good reminder is, hey, we got to keep our sense of humor. We have to be okay with who we are. We have to allow ourselves to have these feelings and not make ourselves wrong for them, right? And just try to keep some humor in this as we go into the season.
Absolutely. Well, I hope we didn't make you too uncomfortable.
No. There's an app. There's a holiday app where I can shows you all of the gas stations closest to you.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So that's what I'm taking out of this.
That's your strategy. Got it.
My strategy.
Well, good luck on your Thanksgiving festivities. Maybe we'll have a follow-up episode where we do like a Melissa's Thanksgiving post-mortem.
Maybe. And maybe not. We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. Our mission is to help people become happier and more effective by gaining insight into their own thoughts and feelings. We'd love your support. First, share this podcast with anyone you think might enjoy it. Second, leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast site. This helps others discover the podcast so we can reach more people. And third, sign up for our newsletter at theselfawarenessjourney.com. This will help us communicate better with you and build our community. Thank you so much for joining us in the Self-Awareness Journey. We'll see you next week.